All right. Good morning. I'm Sunita Sarabji with India West newspaper, and with me is Zakir Hussain,
Hello.
who obviously needs no introduction.
Oh, it's great to meet you, Sunita ji. Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely, and thanks for giving us
I hope you
your
like my
time.
office.
I love your office. It's fabulous.
A
It's
real
really-
fireplace that doesn't work.
And you have basically, by way of introduction, I think you basically created the Marin County Gharana of Indian music. Would you say that that's an accurate?
I don't think it. I'm afraid I shouldn't take all the credit. It didn't really start with me. It started with the great Ustad Ali Akbar Khan.
That's true.
Who in the late 1960s formed his music college, which was based here in Marin County in San Rafael. And I was asked to come and teach there in 1971, fall. And so I taught for the next 10 years, 11 years almost, with a 1-year hiatus in between, sabbatical. And so that's how I ended up in this part of the world. So thanks to Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, who also happened to be somebody who took me under his wings and was like a mentor and a second guru to me, apart from my father, and helped me develop my way of playing. And I have to thank him day in and day out. I do. On every Guru Purnima, I think about him along with my father and other mentors.
You've mentioned your father, and I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your father and how he influenced your
Well, a little
career.
bit might be taking many hours, but just to say in a nutshell, he is my father, but more importantly, he's also my guru. His name is Ustad Allah Rakha, and he and Ravi Shankarji Panditji were responsible first in the late 50s and early 60s to bring attention to Indian classical music in this part of the world and get all these jazz musicians inspired to be able to come forth and want to learn from them. People like John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Charles Lloyd, and great jazz maestros of that time, Pharoah Sanders and so on. And of course they also then inspired people like George Harrison, John McLaughlin, Van Morrison, so many others who decided to look eastwards to be able to expand their musical horizons. All great maestros, superstars, or whatever you want to call it, are never satisfied with where they are, or totally just settled into, oh, I'm selling millions of records, so that's it. They are all interested in learning more and more and expanding their way of musical expressions as much as possible and making it as panoramic as possible. So my father and Ravi Shankarji were in some ways responsible, but for me, he's my guru, he's my teacher. He has made, hopefully, me in his image. Yes, all namaskars to him every day.
Absolutely. Do you feel that there's a legacy there that you have to live up to?
Oh, there's a great amount of incredible Himalayas to live up to when it comes to what he has achieved. I mean, if you remember in the late or early 1950s, after India came out from its independence, Indian musicians were floundering because there was no more court help. They were not court musicians anymore, and so they had to find their way around in the world of music and create Indian classical music to be entertained by to the mass population of India. And it was people like Ravi Shankarji, Vilayat Khan Sahab, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, Bismillah Khan Sahab, my father, Pandit Kishan Maharaj, Samta Prasad ji, who found a way to be able to bring the music to the masses and start to make it popular. But even then, tabla players were considered second-class citizens.
Absolutely.
You seldom saw their name on the marquee,
right?
Or even in the newspaper ads, you never did. And if you look at old LPs from the 1950s and 60s, you will see Ustad Badi Ghulam Ali Khan or Ustad Fayaz Khan Sahab, but you never see who's playing tabla or who's playing sarangi, and all never did. People like my father, through their magnetic personalities and great performances, created the need for the audiences to know about them, and so brought the status of tabla and the tabla players up. And we, as the next generation of tabla players, are reaping the rewards for it.
Absolutely. Som had asked that question earlier. How have you elevated the status of tabla player from the sort of below the surface to the lead musician?
Yeah, absolutely. And now tabla players the world over are not only known as equal contributors to a concert of tabla and sitar or tabla and dance and so on, but they are also asked to lead their own ensembles and come out as lead musicians. Someone like me has been asked to write music for tabla and full symphony orchestras.
That's right. Yes.
And that's unusual. That's even unheard of in the world of Western classical music, because you've got 90 instruments on the stage who are melodic instruments, and you are a rhythmic instrument, and you are the soloist.
Right.
So it's like, how has that happened? And it's entirely due to the efforts of my father, Ustad Allah Rakha, and that's a legacy he's left behind. It's a lot to live up to, and I hope I can do my bit to keep it at least at the level that he brought it to, and hopefully with the help of other my tabla brothers. You have to realize that I'm known as the marquee tabla player of this time, but I'm not the best tabla player around. I'm one of the good ones.
Yes.
And there are others like Sapan Chaudhary ji or Anindo Chatterjee or Shubhankar or Yogesh Samsi or my brother Fazal Qureshi and so many others like Satyajit Talwalkar and Anish Pradhan and Ojas Adhiya and there are incredible tabla players. Aditya Kalyanpur, Anuradha Pal, a great young lady who's a fabulous tabla player. And these are all playing incredible tabla. I mean, and on any given day, they are better than I am. So, but it's just that my name is presented. So, along with their help, I hope that tabla rises even further up, and it's not a one man's job anyway. Ravi Shankar ji made sitar popular, made Indian music popular, but there had to be other sitar players to, to pick up the slack.
The momentum.
Whether it was Ustad Vilayat Khan Sahab or Pandit Nikhil Banerjee or Ustad Rais Khan Sahab, Ustad Halim Jafar Khan Sahab and so on, they picked up the slack and so on, and that's what happened. But it hasn't happened with Shehnai. Bismillah Khan Sahab was a great Shehnai player,
right?
But no one has followed him, and so it has kind of almost disappeared.
Right.
And so it is important that there are others to take over and pick up the flag and walk out. So I'm fortunate that there are such incredible tabla players around, and with their help, hopefully, we'll be able to take tabla to even higher levels.
Absolutely. You are in the studio this week recording, is that right?
Well, this is my office.
Yes.
And this is where we house Moment Records, the company that we formed in 1990. And it brings forth, CDs in its entirety. I don't believe in taking a musician into a studio and have him look at the watch and say, okay, I have to play for 5 minutes or 6 minutes. I like to take the full concert performances of any musician, whether it's Ustad Amjad Ali Khan Sahab or Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma or anybody, and print it in its entirety on a CD. We use, sound, great, incredible equipment that we have, Neve boards and so on and stuff, and we record them live in concert and present it to the audiences. Apart from that, we have a world music section, of course, where we have jazz records and My Rhythm Experience group or Shakti and so on, which are also presented. We have had the honor of presenting recording of Pandit Ravi Shankar ji and myself live in Albert Hall in London. And so it's a satisfying thing to be able to bring Indian music to people in its entirety, and not short little pieces. And of course, the PR department always, they're tearing their head off. Can't you give us a small piece so we can present it? Sorry, this is how long the musician played.
That's right. One of the most fabulous things that's on my playlist right now is a recording of you and Rakesh Chaurasia. That is just absolutely
He's
fabulous.
one of the great musicians I know. We are going on tour.
Yes,
coming
I know.
Up end
Yeah,
of
I
this
was
month.
just going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Rakesh Bhai, myself, the great banjo maestro Bela Fleck, 16-time Grammy winner. Edgar Meyer, multi-Grammy winner, one of the greatest classical bassists in the world, at the moment considered the best classical bass player in the world. So the four of us are going on tour starting October 1st. But we are meeting on September 20th in Nashville to finish our recording. So hopefully the recording will be done and mastered, and then at the end of the tour we'll go back and revisit the record and see if there's any chipping and chiseling and refining to be done. And then of course the record will be released. So this tour is the four of us, and we will play. We did a tour last fall, but mostly on the East Coast. So this tour is in the Midwest and then coming to the West. And we are playing 3 shows at San Francisco Jazz Center on October, I think, 12th and 13th. And they're mostly sold out. There's only like a couple hundred tickets left total of all 3 shows. So if anybody's listening, if they want to come, better hurry.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you, Bela Fleck, Edgar Meyer, yourself, Rakesh, how did you manage to get so many different influences to come together on the stage and perform something that is cohesive in some sense?
Well, to start with, it's Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer's fault.
Yeah.
This whole thing began because Nashville was building a new concert hall for its symphony orchestra.
Okay.
And they wanted, at the opening of the theater, to have a new commissioned piece performed by the orchestra.
Okay.
So they talked to their local musicians, Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer, and said, we'd like you to write a piece for the orchestra to play on the opening day. So they said, well, we've done pieces together, and that's already a done thing, so we'd like to expand a little bit. And they both said that they were a big fan of my music, and so if the Nashville Orchestra agrees, they would like to invite me as the third to be able to write the piece together. So that's how we all came together, and we wrote the music piece together. And then on the day of the performance, we realized that we only have the piece of music to play, but if the audience wants an encore, we have nothing. So what should we do? So as a trio, we then created a couple more things so we could play it. And so that's how the idea of the trio performing came together. And then we made that record with the symphony orchestra and the trio playing a few pieces, and it was called Melody of Rhythm, which was a Grammy-nominated CD.
Right.
And then we did tours of that. And I invited Bela and Edgar to come to India and perform at my father's memorial, the Barsi, on February 3rd, that we hold on every February 3rd in Mumbai. And so they came, and I introduced them to various musicians, and among them was Rakesh Chaurasia. And he jammed with us, and it seemed like the perfect fit. Because he is a musician. Edgar Meyer is a bass player, so therefore he's melodic but rhythmic.
Right.
Bela Fleck is a banjo player. It's melodic and rhythmic. I am a tabla player, which has some tones, melodic tones, but mostly rhythm. So we needed something that can fly all over us in a whole melodic, experience which is a floaty experience as opposed to a rhythmic experience.
Right.
And Rakesh fit the bill just perfectly. So we invited him, and we did this tour last fall, and it was a big success. And the people in the Midwest and the West, the organizers said, well, what about us? Why aren't you coming here? So therefore this tour.
Oh, fantastic. And are you going to be premiering some pieces during this tour?
We have written new music for this tour simply because we are also making a new CD.
Okay.
So the new music will be performed, and along with all the new old stuff that we have. So we have a lot of repertoire that we are going to play. So even though we are playing 3 concerts in 3 shows in SF Jazz, we're going to be able to play different pieces on each one of those shows. And so we are really looking forward to this tour and see how it evolves into what has to be next.
Absolutely. Can you talk about your favorite piece, new piece that you're going to be performing?
Well, we have a piece called the B tune, which is an unusual tune because first of all, it's in the key or the sur of B, which is a highly unusual note for the flute. But and so it's a challenge for someone like Rakesh Bhai to be able to find a way to fit into that kind of tonal mode. And for me, my preferred tabla of choice is usually tuned to the key of either D or E, but I have to play B. So the tone and the texture of the tone that it brings out is going to be different. So in that sense, it's a very interesting piece because it has incorporated not only the tonal challenges, but at the same time, the piece has an element of bluegrass, which is the music that comes from the south part of America, Western classical music, which of course is the Western traditional music of Europe that has come to America in the 1800s and has prospered here, and of course Indian classical music and Indian folk music. All those 4 elements have come together in this piece. It's really one of the most, I would say, the flag bearer piece of what the 4 of us are all about and represent. So that tune is a very challenging and special tune that has come forth. I'm looking forward to another piece that we are doing, which is kind of the next chapter to a piece that I had done with John McLaughlin, Jan Garbarek, Hari Prasad Chaurasi, and myself. So that was a quartet as well. And that was making music. So this is making music too. The tune has not been named yet, and we have been going back and forth in the way how it's going to come together. And so I'm looking forward to that one as well.
That sounds fantastic. And from there, you go back to India for the music festival.
I actually finish this tour on October 20th down in Irvine.
Okay.
And then the very next day, I fly to Europe.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to do a 17 concert tour with another bass player, but this time out and out jazz bass maestro Dave Holland.
Oh, wow.
And one of the most incredible horn player that I've ever had the honor to work with, Mr. Chris Potter. So we are going to be touring as a trio. We actually have a new record that has just come out. It's called Good Hope. So this trio is called the Cross Currents Trio, and the record that has just come out is called Good Hope, and we are premiering that record on this tour in Europe.
Wow.
We are doing 17 concerts all over Germany, Italy, France, England, Spain, all over the place. And of course, we are going as far as an island in the Indian Ocean called La Réunion, which is a French territory. So we'll be flying all the way out there to play concerts as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that tour. And when that tour finishes, which will be on November 17th, I will fly to Boston, to Berklee School of Jazz.
Wow, okay.
Where I'm receiving a doctorate.
Wow.
On November 22nd. And we are going to, I'm going to work with the resident orchestra there to play some of my music on that day when the doctorate is given. So that happens on November 22nd. On November 23rd, I have to go to New York to have a read-through of a composition that my protege, Marcus Gilmore, has written and under the sponsorship of Rolex. And so I'll do that, come home for Thanksgiving, which is on the 27th. And then on 28th, I leave for India.
Okay.
So it's a very busy time.
Yes, absolutely. You were talking a little bit beforehand about the festivals, the music festivals of India, and I wonder if you could describe that a little bit for.
Well, you know, from mid-November onwards till mid-March, it's Indian music time in India. It's a music season. And as I was saying to you, if you want to meet a musician, just stand outside of any airport and you'll run into at least 20 or 30 of them going in and out every day. And there are as many as between 6,000 and 7,000 concerts being held all over the country.
Wow.
Yes, and we run to each other all the time, like musicians run into each other in the lounge. Oh, where are you headed? Well, I'm going to Nagpur for the concert. And where are you going? I'm going to Hyderabad. Where are you going? I'm going to Latur. Latur? Where is Latur? It happens to be in the interior of Marathwada, part of Maharashtra. I mean, villages hold concerts, cities hold concerts, towns hold concerts. You go to some place like Sirsi, which is a betel nut producing part of Karnataka. And there you will find 3,000 to 4,000 farmers as audience, and you're performing for them under the open sky.
That is incredible.
And the concert doesn't begin until like almost 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Because the farmer is working from dawn till dusk. And then he goes home, and then he showers, and then he has his dinner, and then he comes to hear the concert. And so then the concert begins. And it's similar to what happens in France, Germany, Italy, and Spain in the summertime, where they have festivals which are sponsored by wineries. And each festival is a tribute to jazz. And these are all big jazz festivals, which have now kind of expanded to include Indian music and world music and also pop music. So I find myself in all these wineries performing. And so it's great to be able to go out there and receive free bottles of wine.
As good a reason as any to.
Except for Sirsi, you get free box of betel nut.
That's fabulous. And in the midst of that, you are going to be performing with Zain Dalal and the Indian National Symphony Orchestra in Toronto.
Oh yeah, I'm actually going to before that, like 3 days before that, I'm going to be on tour with my dear friend John McLaughlin. John McLaughlin, myself, Shankar Mahadevan, this great Indian violinist Ganesh Rajgopalan, and the son of my great rhythm brother Vinayak Ram. His son is Selva Ganesh Vinayak Ram. So we had a group called Shakti, the next version, the next chapter of it. So we are doing 3 concerts, one in Bangladesh, one is Kuala Lumpur, and one in Singapore, January 14th, 16th, and 17th.
Wow.
So we'll do that, and then I'll fly to Toronto to join my friend Zain Dalal to present my concerto for Tabla and Symphony Orchestra.
Peshkar,
which will be conducted by Zain. And there's another great jazz bassist. His name is Daniel Patatucci. And he will present his piece, which also will be conducted by Zain. And at the end of the evening, Daniel and I will get together and we'll perform an Indo-jazz combo piece, which will be, a combination of both of our pieces, Peshkar and his piece, and jazz and Indian rhythmic possibilities, and do that.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that is so interesting. How do you combine your music with classical Western music and the two?
Well, it's much easier for me than it would be for a melody player. Like when Pandit Ravi Shankar ji wrote his sitar concerto, for instance, which Andre Praveen conducted. he was so torn. I saw him sitting with the orchestrator, and every other minute he would say, no, not that note, because it's not in the raga.
Yes.
And it will be very difficult for the orchestrator to harmonize and assign parts to the violin, violas, cellos, basses, horns, woodwinds, whatever, because Ravi Shankarji was so torn into keeping the integrity of the raga intact.
Right.
And so it was very difficult. For me, I'm a rhythm player.
Right.
So I have just the rhythms. The melody is secondary to that. So I'm not worried about in any way defiling a raga. So it becomes much easier for me to take rhythmic patterns and rhythmic compositions and put melody to it. And then assign the parts to violin, violas, cellos, and everything without worrying about in any way having the raga god come into my dreams and throw a lightning bolt at me.
Yes.
So none of that. But having said that, I started by doing exactly that. But I also felt allegiance to the melodic element of Indian music. So I did include some raga elements, and I crossed my fingers saying, yes, I am crossing the boundaries and turning like Bhopali into something else, or Malkons into something else. And I hope the ragas of the god ragas don't mind, and I was hoping that the connoisseurs in India would not care as much because I'm a tabla player, and they will say, oh, he's just a tabla player, he doesn't know any better. And so I'll get away with it. So that's how it all came together. And basically the piece is a rhythm piece, but so I have tried to make the orchestra turn into a whole 90-piece tabla.
Wow.
So they are playing tabla compositions, but they are playing it in a melodic form, but also in using 4-part harmonies and canons and counterpoints and stuff. So therefore, that's how it came about. And now I'm writing another piece for a symphony orchestra, but this time it will include a trio, which will be tabla, Western classical violin, and Indian flute.
Oh.
So let's see how that's going to turn and how that's going to affect my writing, because now I have to pay respects to the raga and see how that worked.
And what is that piece going to be called, and where
I think I'm going to call it Rasik.
Rasik.
Yeah.
And what is the meaning of Rasik?
Again by the Indian Symphony Orchestra of India.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that. There was another piece that I did for orchestra and 4 soloists, which was premiered at the Kennedy Center, played by the Kennedy Center Resident Orchestra, which is the National Symphony Orchestra. Right. With the conductor Eschenbach conducting. And that piece was called Aas, which means hope. And the reason why I did that, because A for Amen, church, A for Amin,
yes,
and S for Shanti, As. So it's a story about 3 priests, one a Sufi Muslim, one a Hindu priest, and one a Catholic priest.
Oh, interesting.
Hindu priest was played in the voice by Shankar Mahadevan. A Hindu priest was played by Hariharan. Okay. Muslim Sufi priest was played by Shankar Mahadevan, and the Catholic priest was played by a mezzo-soprano singer, Kelly O'Connor.
Oh, okay.
And so this was performed, and the words were written, the English words were written by my wife Antonia Menicola, right? And the Urdu words were written by me, and the Hindu words were taken from the Shastras, the shlokas and stuff, and so that was called Aas, and that was premiered. So this is my 3rd concerto now with the flute and the violin and tabla.
That's incredible. Is that the direction you see yourself heading, or?
No, that's the direction I see myself being pulled, because I never went out to look for this. This was offered to me. Right. And so when I wrote the first one, the second one just followed, and the third one just followed, and the one with Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer just came my way because they wanted it to happen. So now I see this. I mean, I've done music for films, but I never saw myself writing for symphony orchestras. but it has come my way, and it is a challenge that is a humongous challenge, and I'm trying to live up to it the best I can.
Talk a little bit about those challenges, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, the challenges are that you are a rhythm player,
yes.
like I said earlier, and the ragas come into play, and the Western classical music requires that you pay attention to harmonies, and you find a 4-part harmony where there's a line played by the first violins, the line played by violas, line played by cellos, and the horns and the woodwinds and the basses are keeping the bass together, and all of them are playing different aspects of the melodic line. So if you're playing da re re da da, so you might find that the horn might be going pa da re da da, so they are harmonizing it. And so when you're writing a piece of music, it's not just singing one line and saying, oh, that's a melody, so that's it. No.
Right.
Now you got to take the melody and you got to find, oh, what's the other section of it's going to do, the third section of it, the fourth section of it. And you have to find that they have to live together. And in living together, they are not in any way sounding like a cacophony. That they have to melodically sound like they are living in harmony and peace together.
Absolutely.
And so now you're not only thinking of one melody, you're thinking of 4 layers to that melody. So that is a big challenge for someone like me who did not grow up learning Western classical music. It's something that I had to educate myself with in the last 10 years or so. And I have to say that it's a humongous mountain to cross, and in 10 years I've only scratched the surface.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I find myself turning to my dear friend Edgar Meyer, who first asked me to write piece for the Nashville Symphony Orchestra for advice, because he is one of the great composers of Western classical music we have now. And so he helps me out every now and then. No, Zakir, this harmony may not work, and yes, you have assigned this particular melody to the silver flute, but no, it will sound better on the piccolo flute. And such advice comes from him, and so it helps.
Absolutely. 2 more questions and I'll let you go. Who have you not performed with, who you would like to perform with?
Well, the Patitucci that's coming up with Zayn in Toronto, I have heard him play so much, and I know him, but I've never performed with him, so I'm looking forward to that. Writing the new symphonic piece with the Marat Balagliev, who's the violinist, the classical violinist. I have not performed with him, so I'm looking forward to working with him and see how that's going to turn out. Apart from that, playing with John McLaughlin and Shankar Mahadevan and Selva Ganesh. Ganesh Rajgopalan, the violinist, is a new entrant to our group, so I have to see how that's going to work. There are other musicians all over the world who I have not worked with and don't even know they exist, who are going to come forward. I mean, this recent trio, which is Dave Holland and Chris Potter and myself, it's a new thing, and it only started in the last 3 years. So it's a new beginning for me to work with. But having said that, music is such a deep subject that you work with a musician for 30 years, you become family, you become brothers in some ways, and only in the 15th or the 18th or the 20th year, you start to see layers in your relationship with each other that you may not have noticed in the first 5 or 10 years. And then you start, I mean, like I play with Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma now, for instance. We've played together for 45 odd years. And I find myself reacting in a way which I had not done 15 years ago. Because this in-depth understanding of each other as a person, as a composer, as a friend, as a family man, whatever you want to call it, adds a whole different dimension to our interaction. So I find the playing with John McLaughlin, or or even with Bela Fleck that we've played together 15 years, or Edgar Meyer, that there is a different level of understanding of what they are all about as people. So yes, playing with newer musicians is an exciting station to arrive at, but to relive and offer a different perspective of a relationship with a musician I've worked with for 45 or 50 years is a challenge which I really look forward to.
Absolutely. My last question is this. When I last interviewed you, I believe it was in 2017 when you were performing with Niladri Kumar. And you had said at that point that the Obama administration was had planned to give you an award. And that you did not accept the award because you were still an Indian citizen.
Well, not that I did not accept the award. I would have liked to have received the award. It's a big blessing. But I could not get it because a new law had been put into place by the then House and Senate. And the law was that only citizens of the United States can be given that medal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they wanted to know if I could become a citizen or at least apply for it so that I could then be, receive that award. But I'm an Indian.
Right.
I am a born Indian. I play Indian music. I represent Indian culture, and I've lived in America for 40 odd years, but I still have my Indian passport, and I'm an Indian citizen, and I love India, and for me to give that up is unthinkable.
Absolutely.
And so I couldn't give that up, and so it was a choice, was difficult, but I thanked my lucky stars that I was even considered for this incredible honor, and I'm happy to have arrived at that threshold.
Yes.
And that pat on the back, and hopefully we go on, and others will come. Who knows? It's to me, Indian classical music has a rosy future. It's a bright future. The reason why I say that is because look, you've got Niladri Kumar, Purbayan Chatterjee, Rakesh Chaurasia, Rahul Sharma, Anushka Shankar, Kala Ramnath. I mean, you've got a whole incredible list of Indian classical musicians who are, in my opinion, more complete musicians than I ever was at that age. It's because they grew up not only learning Indian classical music from their great masters, but at the same time, parallel, they were learning music of the world. They were learning jazz, they were learning Western classical, they were working in Indian films and therefore working with modern and hip hop and everything. So these musicians grew up learning music as one entity, as a unified statement. And that included not only Indian classical music, but all the music in the world. So in that way, they are more informed and more comfortable playing Indian classical music and playing everything else than I was. I had to teach myself to become comfortable. And so I see Indian classical music in great hands, in good hands, in solid hands, and very well represented by these young flag bearers of the music. So it's a great future.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to see you. Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely.
So thanks for doing this for us.